Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai 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 Ram Om.
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om to everybody. Yesterday at exactly this time, many of our friends who take the vaccine, that is why we have to postpone or cancel yesterday's program. Exactly it started at 3:45 and went down till 5:45. More than 30 people were able to make use of this opportunity. Every one of us has to go through the ups and downs in life almost every day, because God wills certain things to be done and we don't know what is His will. We try to intervene with our own desires and the anticipations are there, and then it doesn't meet with the reality. We become depressed, down, dispirited, dejected, discouraged. Again something else comes to our liking, we are happy. like this goes on. Very often we have been told that Srimad Bhagavad Gita is like a mother. Whenever we are in trouble, when we go and approach her with that frame of mind, she offers us the needed answer, needed clue, needed direction, needed the guidance. Today when we were coming to satsang session, what is it that we will share? Suddenly the prompting comes, that why don't you try to dwell on the Chitta Prajna? Because by constantly hammering the theme explained by the Lord in the second chapter about a man of steady wisdom, we will be able to absorb the shocks to a very great extent. Or initially, even if we are subjected to the shock, in the shortest possible time, we will be able to pull us up and put us on the way. Just like when we go through the biographies of masters, it helps us to a very great extent. Similarly, constantly dwelling on the Chitta Prajna. Mahatma Gandhiji, gives a lot of importance. Later on we came to know that in Bharata Ashram, every day these 18 slokas are chanted. Babaji wanted every one of us to remember this. Vinobaji also, when he was making his commentaries on the 12th chapter, at the end he says, we should often keep repeating this Adhyashta Sarvabhuta and the 8 slokas, because that will make us to intellectually know and truly move towards the reality as to how we can become the closest devotee, dearest devotee of God. In that he makes a mention. These 8 slokas have got equal importance like the Chitta Prajna. So today we will try to go through some preliminaries and then try to take up these 18 slokas one by one. Swami Raghunathji Maharaj says, this section, this is the last section of the second chapter. There are about 72 slokas. So from 54 to 72, it is devoted to the subject which is that state of absolute stability, strength and infinite compassion. Something great has taken place in the human being. All that is petty and small has been washed away. What is that state? You want to know. Arjuna is asking this question on behalf of all of us. Chitta Prajnasya Bhavasha Samadhi Pratyakeshava Siddhati Kim Prabhateta Jimadita Vajeta. What, O Keshava, is the description of a person of steady wisdom merged in Samadhi? How does the person of steady wisdom speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? How does the Chitta Prajna live? How does the Chitta Prajna live, move and talk and behave? That is the basic question. It is not memorizing certain things, Whether the whole idea of asking us to go through this again and again and again, that we have to somehow assimilate. Probably not by one reading or two readings or three readings, by hammering. So that in between line there is a message for us. Each one has interpreted according to what strikes to them. Similarly, we have also to interpret these 18 slokas in our own way. But when Mahatmas have given us some clues, some guidance, that will help us to interpret the shloka in our own way. This is very important. Then only it becomes ours. Otherwise it becomes academic exercise. So everything has to be interpreted by ourselves, in our own way. Our equipment is different. Each one's equipment is different. So there should be an inner alignment with the theme. That inner alignment can come only when we find, what is there, what is revealed by him through us, gets immediately aligned with the theme that we hear. This is just to ensure that it doesn't become an intellectual exercise or an academic exercise. Outwardly he looks like me and you, who see the Prajna. Inwardly there is a tremendous difference. That is a subject we should all remember. We all look alike outwardly, but inwardly the stuff inside is different. Same organs, same constitution of the body, same functioning of the organs. The only change is mind interaction. The rest of the things are same. If there are about 200 organs, beautifully well coordinated, they are functioning in our body, it is the same for everyone. So we all look alike outwardly, but inwardly the stuff inside is different. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, just now you had the Ganesha festival. Many houses made that modaka, beautiful sweet, inside which is coconut and jaggery and very thin rice powder covering it. Very tasteful. Now that is coconut and jaggery. Suppose you put only some dal powder mix inside, that will be inferior product. So sweets may be very nice from outside. Inside may be different stuff. Similarly, all human beings look alike, but inside the stuff is different. There is one who is so lofty, whose mind is always thinking of the happiness and welfare of all people. Outwardly he or she looks ordinary. Here is another person who is petty, small, trying to cheat people. They both look alike, but inwardly they are different. When a wise person and a foolish person work, there is similarity at the bodily level, but dissimilarity in their buddhi level. It is there we read the character of a person. We must be able to go beyond the appearance of a person. We must be able to go beyond the appearance and see what is inside. And so how does one study wisdom? Sita Prajna. Sita means study, Prajna means wisdom. How does he or she appear? Ka bhasha. What is his or her nature? Who has established himself in the Atman? What does one of steady wisdom say? How does one look like that and sit and move around? All these questions Arjuna is putting through one verse. So Sri Krishna gives the answer, which form the verses of the book up to the end of the second chapter. So now he starts off. This question also is needed because, otherwise, how do we know that it is possible? We have to idealize it. We know what is up inside. We know our preferences, priorities, cravings, infatuations, attachments, our desire, ambition, everything we know that. Others may not know that. But there is our upper mind, and there are two sides, there is lower mind and upper mind. The upper mind always enables us to associate with all these lofty ideas. It knows it has got this lower mind. As a first step, it wants to idealize. Then slowly try to make it a reality. Very slowly, gradually. There are lots of pulls and push. So this is what is now engaging Arjuna, in the mind of Arjuna, and then Krishna answers one by one. Bhagavan says, Prajahadi yata kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyev atmana pushtaha sita prajnashta dutya. When one completely casts away, O Partha, all the desires of the mind, satisfied in the self, alone by the self. When one completely casts away, O Partha, all the desires of the mind, satisfied in the self, alone by the self, then he or she is said to be one of steady wisdom. That person is with the prajna in that condition. What is that condition? When he or she has overcome all the desires of the heart. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. When the mind and the heart cease to hanker after this, a stage will come in life when the person realizes that these petty desires and they are nothing compared to his or her true nature as the infinite and ever-free Atma. When we come across with various prayers, small songs, when we hear it in a sattvic mode, it is a very deep impact. That will help us to connect. Oh, this is what I want. There is a beautiful song in Tamil, Shanti Nilavave. We need Shanti. You can get it? Like that, there are so many in every language. Just like the other day we heard about the mind, These are some of the ways by which we try to, the upper part of the mind, upper form of the mind, enables us to extricate the lower form of the mind by making it dwell on these lofty ideas. And especially when it is sung in a particular raga, it has got its tremendous effect. This is a song composed by Aridya. But when it is sung with a devotional fervor, it has got its soul. Why we remembered that? That is my true nature, I should know, Here he says, the stage will come in life when always we should be at peace. Everywhere the peace should prevail. We should be able to revel in peace. Because we keep on hearing it, When we keep on associating with this part. Why we remember this any phenomenon? A stage will come in life when a person realizes that these petty desires are nothing compared to his or her true nature as the infinite and ever-free Atman. I forgot. I started identifying with the limited finite individual. And because of that, I have not been concentrating on my real nature. Every now and then when I go to ashram, when I meet Mahatma, when I go through the text, I am reminded of my original nature. Again it gets diluted. So what is first to return to idealize? Keep on thinking about all these lofty ideas. Why should I identify myself with them? We thus overcome desires by intelligent understanding that nothing can equal in value my own infinite self. Neither 5 rupees, nor a million rupees, nor any other big gift from outside. How can they compare with the infinite value of the self, which is my true nature? Suddenly we realize, we are what we are because of that mysterious power. If at all outwardly we say that we can do this, we can do that, honestly we know that, but for this power, we will not be able to do anything. So how can they compare with the infinite value of the Atman, which is my true nature? This knowledge comes after a long struggle of inward penetration. This knowledge comes after a long struggle of inward penetration. As a child, I want this, I want that. A child cannot understand its own true nature. So always it wants something to eat, something to buy, something to play with. Always out. The child mind goes out. But when the mature mind comes, it realizes that these things are nothing compared to one's own true nature. That is a tremendous life achievement. Today, however, many people do not have that idea that the Atman within me, my own infinite dimension, is far, far superior to all the petty things of the external world. Lust, gold, name, fame, all these we seek in the external world impelled by desire. And desire is the movement of the mind out. Desire is the movement of the mind out. I am not satisfied with me, within me. I want something from the outer world. That is how desire operates. But by discrimination, by the practice of yoga, step by step, we come to a stage which is described here. So through inverse penetration, deeply reflecting, deeply contemplating, person does their desire. As somebody said, we are not human beings passing through spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings temporarily passing through human experience. What's the difference here? We are spiritual beings, basically, intrinsically, essentially we are that. At the moment we are passing through temporary human experience. See, a word from a Mahatma comes like this. And then we start in word journey on this. Then, in reality I am not this. Immediately I may come back to my usual self, small self. But still this will have some difference. That's what he says. And desire is something which is always taking us out. When all the kamas or desires of the heart are thrown away, that is one statement. And Shankaracharya tells us in his commentary that alone cannot make you a Siddha Prajna. I don't desire anything. It can be a pathological state. There may not be anything spiritual about it. You become totally indifferent. When you go to a mental hospital, you will find some people who fully accord with what is said in the teaching of the first line. I don't want anything. Arising from what they call in psychology an apathetic attitude. There are such mental cases in the hospital, they live in a corner, don't want anything, they are immersed in themselves all the time. Are they Siddha Prajna? No, not at all. The first line is not enough. Shankara is going to say that something greater is to be added to that. That is what he said in the second line. Atmanyev Atmana Sutta. He or she is fully delighted in the self by the self. Because of that, I don't want anything. The treasure is here, I don't want it. That is the nature of true and positive renunciation. I have got something infinite with me. What can these petty things do for me? They are all things, without any value. Like children running after toys, bubbles, etc. I am not a child. I don't want these things. We say when we are grown up. Similarly, the highest maturity of the human mind is that it is not dragged away by desirable objects from outside. Not by any effort, but by an effortless, spontaneous process arising from one's knowledge of one's own infinite nature. I am the infinite Atman. What can these things do to me? That is renunciation. Natural, spontaneous. Can you see it? I don't want anything. That is the nature of a true and positive renunciation. I have got something infinite with me. What can these petty things do for me? They are all things, without any value. Like children running after toys, bubbles, etc. I am not a child. I am not a child. I don't want these things we say when we are grown up. Similarly, the highest maturity of the human mind is that it is not dragged away by desirable objects from outside. Not by any effort, but by an effortless, spontaneous process arising from one's knowledge of one's own infinite nature and the infinite Atman. What can these things do to me? This is renunciation, natural, spontaneous. When we are reading these words, there's a beautiful composition by a great Bhakta, Jnani Bhakta. And he brings out in Malayalam, of course, but it is interspersed with the Sanskrit words, so many of you might be able to understand. But it is the fullest revelation. And the first when we hear itself, we know something is there, something is there, something is there. As we keep on reading this, then slowly, he touches our kindles, even if it is for a short time. first. ദുഃഖങ്ങളില്ല, രുചയില്ല, തളർച്ചയില്ല, വാർദ്ധക്യമില്ല, മൃതിയില്ല, ശരീരമില്ല, അജ്ഞാനമില്ല, ഭവബന്ധനമില്ല എനിക്ക്. ഞാൻ ബ്രഹ്മമാണ്, പരമേശ്വരനാണ്. ബന്ധുക്കളില്ല, ഗൃഹമില്ല, രിവുക്കളില്ല, കർമ്മങ്ങളില്ല, മതരോപ ഭയങ്ങളില്ല, നേടേണ്ടതായി ഇഹപരങ്ങളിൽ ഒന്നുമില്ല. ഞാൻ നിത്യബുദ്ധ പരിശുദ്ധ വിമുക്തനാണ്. ഞാൻ 100 വട്ടം ഉലകിൽ ജനിപൂണ്ടുവെന്നും ഒട്ടേറെ മാൽ അനുഭവിച്ചു കുഴങ്ങിയെന്നും തെറ്റിദ്ധരിച്ചു, വിലപിച്ചു, വെറും കിനാവാണി കണ്ട് എന്നറിവ് പൊന്തി ഉണർന്ന നേരം ഞാൻ അമ്മതൻ വയറിൽ നിന്ന് പുറത്തു വന്ന് മന്ദം വളർന്ന് വലുതായി വയസ്സനായി ശ്വാസം വലിച്ചു മൃഗനായി ജനിച്ചു വീണ്ടും എന്നൊക്കെ ഓർത്തത് വെറും ഭ്രമമായി. ദുസ്വപ്നം ഇങ്ങനെ അസംഖ്യ യുഗങ്ങൾ കണ്ട് പെട്ടെന്ന് ഉണർന്ന് നയനങ്ങൾ മിഴിച്ച നേരം പ്രത്യക്ഷമായ പരമാത്ഭുതമായ കാഴ്ച ഞാൻ ശേഷശയ്യയിൽ നരുളുന്നവരെ. സ്വാനന്ദ ഭൂമികയിൽ നിന്നും അനങ്ങിടാത്ത ഞാൻ ഇത്രമാത്രം അഴകൊന്നും വരാതെ തന്നെ നിർമൂലമായി മതിമറന്നു കരഞ്ഞതെന്ത് വിഡ്ഢിത്തം എന്ന് നിരൂപിച്ചൊടുവിൽ നിശ്ചയിച്ചു. There is no sorrow, there is no bondage, there is no fatigue or tiredness, there is no aging, there is no death, there is no body consciousness, there is no ignorance. I am free from everything. And what am I? I am the Brahman. I am the Parameshwar. I am the eternal reality. I have no relations. I have no home of my own. I have no enemies. I have nothing to know, no duties to perform. I am free from all anxieties and fears. I have nothing to attain either here or hereafter. I am that Nitya Shuddha, Nitya Buddha Parishuddha. I am free from everything. The notion that I have taken birth for 100 times or more than 100 times, I was subjected to go through many of the sufferings. Then finally, my end came. I was dead. Again, I get into another one. All these things, now I realize it was only hallucination. But at the same time, like this, when it was flying up in my mind, I was seeing this. For years, I have been closing this hallucination. The moment I am awake, suddenly I realize I am seeing all these from this Sheshasri, from a higher platform. I looked at this, yeah, correct. At that time, it looked to be very real. But now I realize it is not real. When I am establishing this Swananda Bhumi, when I am establishing my own blissful nature, but when I look, there is nothing for me to cry, to weep, to grumble, to complain. But how did I completely forgot about my original nature? Nirmoolamai Madimarannu Karannu. So because of the ignorance of my original nature, I was weeping, I was complaining, I was feeling desperate. The sense of incompleteness was becoming more and more intense in me. Why did I do that? Then only I realized it was my own folly. The moment I became aware that it was my own folly, I was laughing at myself. സ്വാനന്ദ ഭൂമികയിൽ നിന്നും അനങ്ങിടാത്ത ഞാൻ ഇത്രമാത്രം അഴലൊന്നും എഴാതെ തന്നെ നിർമൂലമായി മതിമറന്നു. Root, I forgot my root. കരഞ്ഞത് എന്ത് വിഡ്ഢിത്തം. So, these are something like our Nirvana Shakam. where we are reminded by Adi Shankara what is our original nature. So during our past moment, during our sattvic moment, suppose we fill our mind to dwell on those things. These are all the work of the upper part of the mind. Again, when we are back to the lower self, it will have its own effect. So how to develop this Siddha-prajna? These are some of the ways. Bringing into our life, mind, as the Papa used to strongly always advocate now, have some slogas, you see. Some prayer. Easy prayer. That will connect us to the reality with it. It will have its own deep impact. So here he says, he or she is fully delighted in the self, by the self, not from anything from outside. Because of that, I don't want anything. Nothing for me to attain either here or hereafter. That sense of fullness. That is the nature of true and positive renunciation. I have got something infinite within me. What can these petty things do for me? They are all things without any value, like children running after toys, bubbles, etc. I am not a child. I don't want these things we say when we are grown up. Similarly, the highest maturity of the human mind is that it is not dragged away by desirable objects from outside. Not by any effort. It is by effort, it's a tremendous struggle. How do we understand? When we were children, when we all look back, we were having toys with us. We will never part with anybody. If somebody takes it, we will cry, make a big fuss over it. But our attachment towards petty things like these, did we renounce? No, it dropped off by itself. That is what Swami here says. Not by any effort, but by an effortless, spontaneous process arising from one's knowledge of one's own infinite nature. I am the infinite Atma. Nitya Buddha, Parishuddha, Vimsa. What can these things to be? I once read a story of a Catholic Christian saint of the very early centuries. The saint had a friend, a magistrate. The magistrate was telling another friend, before I die, I want to give all my property to this saint, my friend. And that man reported it to the saint. Then the saint asked him, what did he say? Before I die, I want to give all my property to the saint. Did he say that? Yes, sir. Does he not know that I have already died earlier than himself? What a beautiful expression. I am already dead to all these things. I don't need any one of these. Now that is an actual state. There is no need to prod a man to develop that feeling. Very important. Because he has achieved something greater, namely love of God, bhakti. What worldly things can compare with that wealth that comes to you through bhakti? Therefore, the second line of the verse says, Atmanyev Atmanapushtam. Oneself is satisfied with one's own infinite Atma. Then only Siddha-prajna one can be said to be a Siddha-prajna. My heart is not empty. First I emptied it of all these finite external desires. But I did not leave it empty. I filled it with the infinite Atma. Then no more desires can come. First I emptied it of all these finite external desires. But I did not leave it empty. I filled it with infinite Atma. Then no more desires can come. This has been expounded in various ways in the Upanishad, especially in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which gives these words, Aptakama, Aptakama, Akama, Atmakama, Aptakama, Akama. Three statements are there. First is called Aptakama. All desires have become fulfilled, fully satisfied. That is called Aptakama. How? Atmakama. When you realize the Atman, then that state can come. And in that state you become also Akama desire. This is achievable by every human being, by proper discrimination, by realizing one's own true nature as infinite, immortal and divine. We have seen, when we go back and we read these lines, the Almighty Lord blessed us with such people. They may not talk about philosophy, they may not talk about spiritual progress, but in their practical life, very simple, humble, highly contented. Though they are all exposed like all of us to the varied manifestations, still we have found they don't have any attachment, any craving, fully satisfied. Even a few of them were not even schooled, they did not have any education, formal education. At the same time, they go to the market, they see so many things, they see people who are enjoying so many, so-called enjoying so many things with the future comforts. They don't come and tell us we want that, we want. Always contented. Now we realize that this is a natural, spontaneous state. The other one, to bring out, to develop all these desires, it is a strenuous thing. Whereas the other one is original. Unpolluted, uncorrupted. So we say, when you realize the Atman only, then this is achievable by every human being by proper discrimination, by realizing one's own true nature as infinite, immortal, divine. I am not this tiny body, mind complex. I am not a tiny creature. Even in the limited levels of life, this kind of thinking is very, very effective. As I often say, a person says, I am a petty school master in a village school, or I am a petty clerk in an office. By this thinking, the person reduces himself or herself to pettiness. By a wrong attitude, he or she need not do that. He or she can tell that he or she is a citizen of free India, working as a clerk, working as a teacher. There you put your being first and function second. Your being first and function. But normally we put function first and being nowhere. Somebody asks, what are you? You gave a profession. That is how in the tradition is. And so on. Here he says, he or she can tell that he or she is a citizen of a free India, working as a clerk, working as a teacher. There you put your being first and function second. But normally we put function first, being nowhere. The little function you do, you identify with it. Nobody is petty unless one makes oneself petty. You are a citizen of free India. What can be a greater status than this? So even in socio-political life, this attitude makes a lot of difference to human being status. And in spiritual life, it works wonders. I am the infinite Atman. I am the child of God. It is very difficult to give up desire. It becomes easy when you realize your own true nature more and more. I am the infinite Atman. I am the child of God. It works wonders. It is very difficult to give up desire. It becomes easy when you realize your own true nature more and more. You don't try to drive them away. It is very difficult to give up desire. It's beautiful, there is true, It's very difficult to give up desire. But it becomes easy when you realize your own true nature more and more. You don't try to drive them away, desires. I don't need them. That attitude is not. There are two types of life, desire-based life and need-based life. The modern marketing technology creates the need in us. Desire. Then we go and buy. Not that we want. Without all these things, we have been managing, But one by one, we keep on saying that it ensures a comfortable life. And in that process, no doubt it is comfortable. But in that process, we lost them. We lost them. Now, one section of people are trying to go back. So you don't try to drive them away. I don't need them. That attitude will come. I am full. What a wonderful idea. Yesterday you were reading a traveler. A traveler doesn't keep anything. Only what is essential. That is put in a bag and then they go. When he met a Mahatma and in his tiny kutia, he did not find any furniture. This man wanted to sit, he cannot sit on it. There was nothing there. So he asked him, where are the furnitures? This man looked silently, looked at him and said, where are yours? I am a traveler, I am not a traveler. That's it. It looks like a simple word, but it is profound. The craving for possession, suddenly we become aware. At the time of death, we can't take anything. In a way, it's a travel. Sense of individuality is travel. From birth to death. Why do we carry? Now I have got a very big baggage on my back. Very difficult for me even to carry. But this particular aspect, reminds me, hey, unload. Nothing is yours. I am full. What a wonderful idea. That is the teaching that makes us Siddhaprajna. Steady wisdom. Even if you get 5% of the steadiness, even that will make your life and work very, very rich and joyous. We don't expect millions of people to become fully Siddhaprajna. But here is the ideal towards which we all can move. If one takes one step, that's a blessing. If one takes more steps, all the better. That's a very powerful word. Here is the idea towards which we all can move. We don't expect millions of people to become fully Sthitaprajna. There are a lot of compulsions, at the family level, professional level, social level. So many compulsions are there, and we heed to it. We become obliged to give in for that. But here he says, why don't you, elsewhere, when he's talking about yoga, yoga karma subhaushana, he used to say that, why not we become a 5% yogi? Lord Krishna whispers, be a yogi, be a yogi, be a yogi. I can't become a yogi. Just 5%, 10%. Yoga means union with God. So I remember him at least for 5 minutes, connect myself to him, remember that I owe everything to him, remember that he is providing everything through me. Like that, at least out of the 15 or 17 hours of the waking state, once, twice, thrice, 4 times. So he says that even if you get 5% of the steadiness, even that will make your life and work very, very rich and joyous. That will make your life and work very, very rich and joyous. We don't expect millions of people to become fully Sthitaprajna. But here is the ideal towards which we all can move. If one takes one step, that's a blessing. If one takes more steps, all the better. Bertrand Russell says, we are in the middle of a race between human knowledge as a means and human folly as to the end. Unless men increase in wisdom as much as in knowledge, increase of knowledge will be increase of sorrow. That is the goal of human evolution. The human being is greater than his or her profession. This is a truth which sometimes is driven home to us in crisis of life. Human being is greater than his or her profession. We had the good privilege of working with a person daily. So whenever we go in our vehicle, suppose somebody is working, he will stop. We will ask them to get in. At times the jeep or vehicle will become full. And they will ask, I have to get down here, like bus, you will stop it. So one day somebody asked, you don't know the person who is getting in. Suppose something happens to him or something, how will you know? He said, anyway we have to drive the vehicle. The same fuel is going to be spent. Whether there are 2 people or 10 people, what does it matter? And if it was to happen, they will pay them at that time. That doesn't mean that they should be denied because of this. Human being, when he said human being, the human being is greater than his or her possession. Not little incidents, we are reminded. Anyway we are going, we have to spend the fuel, and somebody is walking. Our intellect will immediately come and say, no, it's your problem, you don't know what he is. He may have some material benefit. All these things our intellect may say, and we lose the human, relation between a co-creation. It is lost. But at one stroke he will say, it is alright. When it comes like I do. But that does not make us deny this today. Humaneness. When we read these words, we should try to connect up with our own experience. Then it becomes very, very clear. Then only it is interpreted to us in the way in which we can understand. We don't want somebody's explanation. Somebody's explanation is necessary to make us to interpret in our own way. Papa has made it very, very clear right from the beginning. You will be able to understand Ramdas's words only through your perspective. experience, not through the books. They all become academic now. You can memorize in your store, that's all. But if it has to be assimilated into our system, if it has to become a part of it, if it has to be integrated with it, it has to be interpreted in the way in which this mind can understand, this intellect can understand. How do we understand? Then you remember many incidents where this was structured and kindled. Oh, this is how, this is how. What is the meaning now? It is not the textual meaning, it is not the word meaning that we want. It is the experiential meaning we want. And I saw this truth revealed during the I saw this truth revealed during the Burma to India evacuation during the last war. I was in Rangoon from 39 to 42 when the Japanese bombing and invasion of Rangoon took place. Life in the city was completely dislocated. People started evacuating to India. They belonged to Andhra, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, Tamil Nadu. Everybody wanted to carry as many of their possessions as possible to India. So from their household they carried with them big radios, bedding, blankets and many other costly things. But how could they carry all these to the long distance to India? After some distance, one item was left behind on the road. Then some other item. Till only the person or his bare necessities remained as their possession. And only the person reached India. Such experience must have occurred in such situation in other parts of the world also. So in a crisis period, you realize that the ultimate value is the person alone and not what he or she possesses. Very interesting thought provoking. But every day we should note down what is it that stays with me now. At least one or two points. First and foremost, the thing is, I am as a spiritual child of our Master, we should often be reminded that we are not what we assume ourselves to be. Intellectually also. We are basically, intrinsically, essentially not this. We are that. So we have to keep on reminding it in the midst of all our activities by some other means. That will help us. And in that process, God will mysteriously make us get in touch with simple slogas, inspiring songs, prayers, and so the mind dwells on it, mind develops a liking for it, and the more we like it, the more we try to dwell on those through other songs, that means our mind is getting habituated to something loftier, something higher. This is one aspect. And what is it that prevents? When I am full, that is my original nature, but I am not aware of it because of my zoning. Not that. So I must keep on doing this. I don't possess. I did not bring anything and I won't take anything when I leave. So possessions have got a limited value and utility in this journey. It has got relevance, no doubt. It has got some utility value, no doubt. But it is not the ultimate. Somehow I will try to. And then I think about it, so many other incidents come in my life. So that slowly and steadily, we are associating ourselves with the concept of the person. That is the preparatory ground by which we will be able to understand. Otherwise, it will be only a sloga reading. So here a conscious effort is made to know the meaning of it in the truest sense. So Papa is providing a wonderful opportunity by going through the 18 slokas. We will try to take it at one time tomorrow. हरि ओम। ओम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। ओम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। ओम
श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। ओम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। ओम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। ओम
श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। ओम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम।
श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम। ओम श्री राम जय